The harsh reality of the Western Front is that long before a soldier ever feared a bullet, he feared the cold. It seeped into boots, crawled under wool, and settled deep into the bones. Anyone studying trench life knows that winter was often a deadlier opponent than the enemy in the next ditch. So, before diving into the actual hacks, it's worth grabbing your attention with a reminder history buffs understand well. Every surviving diary entry from the Somme, Passchendaele, Verdun, or Ypres reads the same in winter. The cold was merciless, and sleep was a luxury won by ingenuity, not comfort. What you're about to learn isn't romantic speculation. These are field-tested methods men used when the only bed was 6 inches of mud or frozen chalk. For the battlefield survival audience, this guide goes deeper than the usual retelling. It's the practical logic behind each method, how soldiers used it under fire, and how a modern survivalist could apply the same principles in the field. No dramatics, just clean, honest, historical knowledge that still works. A soldier survived frozen ground by creating a barrier between his body and the earth. The first and most universal hack was to break contact with the frozen ground. Every veteran wrote about it because direct contact with cold soil drains heat faster than almost anything else. Soldiers scavenged anything they could find: the wooden duckboards lining trenches, spare sandbags, even discarded ration boxes. In modern terms, they were building an improvised insulating layer. A soldier might fill 2 empty sandbags with straw, dry grass, or even crushed paper scraps, and lay them down as a crude mattress. You can apply the same principle today by prioritizing ground insulation before worrying about blankets. Even a layer of evergreen branches or tightly packed clothing under your torso can replicate what those men improvised in trenches near Arras or the Somme. Many soldiers heated the ground itself, using trench candles or embers before bedding down. When temperatures dropped below freezing, some units used trench candles, small tin cans packed with wax cardboard, to warm a patch of ground before lying on it. The heat didn't last long, but it thawed enough frozen dirt to reduce shock to the body. Others scraped shallow pits and dropped hot stones or embers inside, covering them with soil to radiate warmth upward. This required caution, but it worked. A modern survivalist could use heated rocks from a campfire wrapped in cloth or buried under a thin layer of dirt to mimic the same effect. The World War I version was far more primitive, yet soldiers swore by it when fuel was available. A soldier trapped on frozen ground learned to trap his own breath as insulation. Men at the front often slept curled into themselves, tucking their faces inside their greatcoats. They weren't hiding, they were creating a microclimate. Each breath warmed the pocket of air inside the coat, reducing heat loss around the chest and neck. This wasn't pretty, but it worked in Flanders winters, where wind cut through trenches like knives. If you were applying this today, you'd mimic it with a hooded jacket, or by wrapping a scarf around your mouth just to keep that warm air circulating close to your core. Troops paired up to share heat when temperatures were lethal. Historians don't talk about it often, you know, because it sounds a bit too vulnerable for battlefield imagery. But men routinely slept back-to-back in dugouts to share body heat. It wasn't sentimental, it was survival. Two soldiers pressed together lose heat dramatically slower than one exposed to the air gap. Even elite mountain troops in later conflicts, they kept this method. A modern survivalist can, use the same principle in an emergency, especially when bedding or shelter is limited. Soldiers used their greatcoats as multi-layer wind barriers rather than blankets. Greatcoats were not meant as blankets, yet troops often used them as wind shields. Instead of lying under one like a quilt, soldiers wrapped it around the shoulders first, then folded the lower portion under their legs, sealing drafts. This prevented cold air from entering at weak points. You can apply this by, shaping your outerwear like a cocoon instead of laying it loosely. The key is, eliminating gaps, one of the major lessons learned from those winter campaigns around Ypres and Champagne. Some units, they built elevated sleeping shelves inside the trench walls. Engineers in better constructed trench systems would carve shelves right into the walls and line them with sandbags. Elevating the body even just 1 foot above the ground, it really did significantly reduce exposure to the worst dampness and cold. On the modern side of things, if you ever have to bivouac on frozen terrain, building elevation, whether with logs, debris or snow platforms, can, replicate this hugely effective tactic. Soldiers learned to dry their clothing before sleep, even if it meant using body heat. This hack sounds a bit counterintuitive, but men often removed wet socks or shirts and placed them inside their coats to dry using body heat. Sleeping in wet clothing is dangerous. Drying it using the only heat source available, their own bodies, was a calculated discomfort. If you're in the field today and can't build a fire, the principle remains. Moisture must be eliminated before sleep, even if the method is unpleasant. They rationed movement just before sleep to avoid sweating. Veterans of the winter trenches understood that sweating before rest was a silent killer. So they slowed movements, ate something small if they had it, and let their bodies cool down gradually before settling in. Sweat trapped under wool froze quickly, making sleep nearly impossible. Anyone practicing cold weather survival should apply the same logic. Stop moving early, let your layers equalize, then bed down. If you've made it this far, you're exactly the type of person this channel is built for. Someone who respects history not as entertainment, but as a manual written in hardship. So if you want more deep dive breakdowns like this, make sure to subscribe, share the video with fellow history buffs, and help grow a community that values real knowledge passed down from the men who lived it.